So basically, when it comes to AI supercharging, what I tell people, and Tony, you and I were talking about this, it's kind of like it's not necessarily like AI changes who you are as a business. It just enhances you as a brand. And so today that's the focal point. But first, before we get into that, I need to I'm going to go over just quick the agenda. Um, and by the way, I want to make sure that if anyone has any pressing questions, they feel comfortable to just ask them. Um, I want to move quickly through this so that we can have time for question and answer at the end. Um, so real quick, what we're going to talk about are risks to the brand, what AI poses as risks to your brand, some mindset shifts, ways of thinking, and then a roadmap to supercharge your brand. So let's get into it real quick. When it comes to AI, everyone, it's easy to jump on the bandwagon and just say, okay, let's just start using tools. But before you do that, you have to understand that there's pitfalls here. So, for those of you who have seen this movie, Jurassic Park, oldie but a goodie, I'll remember this line. You were so preoccupied with whether or not you could, you didn't stop to think if you should. This is what we tell businesses a lot when they want to just kind of adapt and start to adopt new tools. Um, this is just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's kind of like the mindset that we adopt when it comes to AI. So, what are these pitfalls? Well, they're forms of erosion. There's internal indirect erosion, so things that you do that don't necessarily impact your brand today, and then there's direct erosion, which can impact your brand today. First, we'll talk about indirect erosion. First off is carelessly publishing content. So, if you were to use Gen AI to kind of write a social media post, but didn't review it thoroughly, you can actually hurt your brand by just putting it out there. Um, so that's something that you have to be careful about. Next thing is, and we've probably all seen, had that happen to us before at times, and it can happen. But just being careful with what we generate and then what we post, making sure it's been thoroughly reviewed. The next one is chasing theory. A lot of times I see people fall into this trap, which is the tool that, oh, here's this tool that can do this in theory. Oh, here's this cool tool that can do this in theory. We've seen some pretty big brands make this massive pitfall become a reality by saying, "Oh, in theory, this AI tool can replace an entire call center, so let's do it," and then it ends up doing extreme damage to their brand. So don't just chase theory; actually look at um, practical use cases. Another one is ignoring ethical and privacy concerns. We talked about this in depth in our last webinar. But the main idea here is making sure that we aren't just doing something, that we are making sure that it follows within our set standards and guidelines, and it's not illegal or doing anything that would violate any sort of compliance issues. Next, losing your brand voice. This is something that a lot of people don't think about, but you can't just have AI just write something for you. And just because it sounds good doesn't necessarily mean that it's how you want your brand to be portrayed. Um, and then direct erosion. This is something that's we're seeing more on like bigger levels, but I call it AI gimmicking. Basically, just like s- slapping the letters AI onto something that you do because it sounds cool. So like Dyson released this vacuum and they're like, it's an AI vacuum. And people are like, what does that mean? Well, it means that there's like software in the vacuum that helps the vacuum run slightly more efficiently. Okay, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. It's still a vacuum cleaner, but because people see AI, they're like, oh, AI. And so brands have to be careful that they're not just jumping on that and throwing AI into something to help promote maybe a new product or service if it's not actually really making that big of a difference. The next point is creating a new product or service. If you are, say, in the tech industry and you find that AI is helping you to vibe code and you realize, oh man, we could create software, custom softwares for every single client, then you start to say, yeah, we can start doing this and start offering this as a product or a service. If it wasn't already something that you were doing, I'm not saying it can't create new opportunities, but you should be very careful to just build a new product or service off of just an AI capability. This is something that can hurt your brand if it's not done well. So, all right, moving on. Oh, quick question: has anyone seen any other pitfalls that using AI can do to hurt your brand? Anything?
I think there's nuances, Matthew, that you can see in text that are telltale signs that there are uh, that AI is being used. Just recently, Linda was using it, but then completely modified it, and Grammarly was still telling her, "This looks like it's AI generated." Even some of her original text, Grammarly
Mm,
was telling her, "This is AI generated," and it was not. It wasn't even inspired. So I mean, there were a few parts. I thought that was interesting.
yeah, yeah, that
That's
is.
that's actually a good point. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot of things where now I think Bill's right. There are some telltale signs. Um, for instance, the overuse of emojis, the infamous M dash, where it'll say, it's not about this, it's about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, if you're using this for your content to promote yourself on LinkedIn, I mean, first of all, the LinkedIn algorithm can now predict or detect this. So it's kind of a waste of time to use. And also, when you have customers that have authenticity, like they question your own authenticity if you're just copy and pasting AI. Look, I use AI to create content too, but I use it as a guideline, and then I'll go back and put in my own words or add my own things instead of just copy pasting. And it's funny, like sometimes there are some fails. It's kind of like back in COVID when people are figuring out how to use Zoom calls, and they'd show someone who didn't quite remember to turn their camera off and they went into the bathroom or something like that. And they're innocent mistakes, but there are things that are I think you're right. Like if you're not careful, there are things that people don't usually forget.
Yeah. One of the things that my wife had gotten this book, and she and I, she, because I use AI, she also uses it a ton. She's reading this book and she's like, this is a new author, some lady who I think she has a podcast or a YouTube channel, and she's like, oh, she wrote a book, and she's looking it over and she's like, I think this book was written by AI, and she shows me it's like every page has like 20 M dashes. And I was like, are there any of those? It's not this, it's that, something more profound. And she's like, yeah, it's like right on the back. It's like this book isn't just a guide. It's your aid for life or something. It's just like, okay, yeah, this is clearly AI. Makes you wonder really how much input they actually had. Um, so anyways, all right, so moving on. Um, so what that can lead to are brand risks, and I'll fly through these because we're here more to talk about AI and less about the brand, but the brand precedes AI, so you have to understand having a strong brand. That's what we are. We are branding and marketing experts, so we can't help but talk about this sort of stuff. So you can risk loss of clarity, which is when you don't know your brand confusion when your clients don't understand your brand, dilution of position. This is something that happens over time when your company has drifted off its original course. And then your team can align, you can have issues within your team aligning around these tools, and therefore it can affect your brand because they're not all, it's your company is becoming less and less about um, an idea and something building towards, uh, and more about just a paycheck, an economic engine. And we don't want our staff to be helping us because it's an economic engine. Um, so then what are the brand opportunities? Well, we talked about this. It's like Mario collecting the star, right? Mario knows who he is. Mario knows what he's capable of doing. The star just empowers him to be more of what he is. Tony had a really good post about this a couple weeks ago. And Tony, you took the analogy and totally ran with it. And I would encourage you to visit Tony's LinkedIn channel. Tony posts a lot about AI. The complete opposites are you first have to know your brand. You must understand your brand and what you want your brand to be. Then you have to communicate that effectively. Clients want to understand, so you just have to help them. Secondly, or third, you have to have the vision. You just need to have direction for where your brand is going and how AI can support that. And then when you are passionate about that, then your team becomes passionate about that. Your team will unite around that strategy. And your team will understand and accept, even if some of them are really AI resistant, they will still understand that and be able to rally around that. So moving on from there. Oh, this is one thing. For those of you who've never heard of the term knowledge base, when it comes to AI, a knowledge base is basically, it's nothing more than, it's basically just like a folder that you have all of your information on. In our knowledge base, we have everything that relates to our brand voice, in addition to all of our products and services. Um, and this is when you're building a new AI bot, you can feed it a knowledge base, and now all of a sudden it is brought right up to speed. You know, a knowledge base, think of it when you bring on a person who is starting at your business, it would almost be like a binder of all of your processes and systems. And you say, here you go. And here's everything about our company. Here's everything about our brand voice. This is something that we encourage people to add to their knowledge base when they're training in AI, which is a brand blueprint. A brand blueprint is something that we'll create for people. You can see it's got everything from core values to your market category, your vision statement, your elevator pitch, even, especially your logo, and even how your logo, the story behind the logo, anything that's really important and relevant to your brand. Um, all right. So moving on from there, any questions before I move on? Any thoughts? Okay. All right. So mindset shifts. My daughter, she saw me working on this. She's like, "What's wrong with her head?" I was like, No. It's just an illustration to show, like, shift your mindset. Like, you can't, just because that's how you've thought doesn't mean that's how you should think. So I told her that this lady is okay. She's not hurt. There's not a computer inside her brain. But these the idea is AI. We keep saying it's like a supercharging of your brand. It isn't your brand. It doesn't change your brand. It enhances who you already are. So, um, instead of just generating text, image, video, whatever to just put out there, maybe use it more so as inspiration or as an initiation for a post. Um, Maybe the end result can be something that was AI generated, but it doesn't always have to be. Um, the next is find practical uses for AI instead of just saying, oh, in theory, it could do this. Then challenge yourself and say, but in practice, let's prove it. Let's prove it first, and then we'll run with it. So, as a good example, that's one of the principles we use here at Identity Creative. I test a lot of AI tools. And every time I test a tool, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. In theory, this could streamline our processes in XYZ. But then the next sentence isn't okay, then let's all adopt it. No, it's all right, you prove it, you test it, and then you teach it and implement it. So that's kind of like how it should work. Then find products or services that are already in existence to supercharge. Instead of creating new products and services, find products and services that you already offer to make those run faster and more streamlined. Um, this is a very critical thing. Teach AI your brand voice, like I said, and your knowledge base. Teach it how you want yourself to sound. That's There's a video on this. It's very critical, making sure that your AI is trained on all your past social media posts. Or maybe if you don't necessarily have a good knowledge base to work from, look at people whose brands you want to emulate and add that to your knowledge base. Um, leave AI out of your sales pitches. And the reason why I say this is because even though it was cool 2 years ago to say, like, yeah, we use AI to do X, Y, and Z, it's starting to become one of those things where AI is going to quickly become as rote as electricity. In other words, it's so common that if you were to say, our business runs off electricity, and you add that into your sales pitch, people are going to be like, yeah, whose business doesn't run off electricity? Um, so this is something that you can affect your brand voice. It can make you sound dated. And then work within a plan to implement your AI. So we'll talk about that in a minute, having it like a roadmap or strategy to move forward. And then finally, pursue mastery of your existing business. One of the things we say all the time is AI can distract away from just good old-fashioned business principles. The things that got businesses to this point are the things that are going to get it to the next point. AI is just an enhancement of that. So, um, are there any other mindsets that anybody else has found to be helpful as they've been adopting AI?
Uh, Not necessarily mindsets, Matthew, but I think one thing that comes to mind is that typically if your brand, you have certain concepts behind, certain stories behind it. AI can enable a lot of things, so it does not mean that, the old disciplines are still are not valid. So you still have to be consistent with those stories, those concepts that you are using to portray your brand in the marketplace. So to be careful that you're consistent with those in terms of what you're trying to portray in the marketplace regarding your brand. Otherwise, with
Mhm.
AI, you could really, overstep and go far beyond the boundaries of those because AI
Yeah.
can support a lot of that or allows a lot of that. And so you still have to be careful that you stay within the boundaries of the brand that you're trying to portray.
Exactly. I think that oh, sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, Matthew, I don't want to interrupt the thought. Keep that thought, but just I really appreciate that idea of leaving it out of your sales pitch. I'm one who wants to give credit where credit is due, and I'm still fairly new to this, just the last year or so, but using it more, and I find myself wanting more, or this kind of this unwritten obligation to acknowledge that I've used AI to help me write or help me create something. And I kind of still struggle with that. I know what you're saying as far as it being a benefit and holding back on communicating that to your clients because it could date you. But anyway, I think I need to just keep it in my mind is that, it's just a tool, just like a typewriter, just as, as you're saying, electricity, just everybody's going to be using it to different levels. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's yeah, like electricity or like computers, you wouldn't say, yeah, we use computers to get our work done. It's like, of course you do. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, all right, so moving on. So we're gonna I don't want to spend too much time on this, but these are, and this is all being recorded, and these slides are going to be given after the fact. But areas for enhancement, and people say, okay, so what can I use it for? These are like areas of your business where you can use AI, and here's some just kind of suggestions. You can generate on-brand headlines. Obviously, like I'm not opposed to generating content for social media. It just has to be on brand. Kind of like exactly what Piyush was saying. Brainstorming ideas, great idea there. Create unique visual assets, very powerful as well. Just making sure that they're not like obviously AI generated with weird artifacts going on. Sales, analyze customer data, automated lead scoring, and create personalized proposals. Another thing that I could also add to that is prospecting. AI is phenomenal for prospecting. Customer service, develop AI-powered chatbots, summarize support tickets, analyze customer feedback. These are areas that we haven't really begun to use AI yet personally within our brand because most of our tickets are like bigger items, so we don't have like a lot of high volume tasks coming through the pipeline. Operations and internal, this is something that I get a lot asked about a lot, and this is something that I'm gonna have Tony and Piyush kind of just talk about in a minute. But this is how your business operates and this is how your business runs. This is one of those things about indirect erosion where using AI here won't necessarily affect your brand today, but it could in 6 months. Automating routine administrative tasks, just transcribing meetings, streamlining research by summarizing large documents, stuff like that. I also have this website that I put together real quick. Um, this is, I can share this too. This is kind of like a breakdown of those areas. So, we got marketing. You can see these tabs up here, and then this just dives deeper into that, gives you some case studies. Sales, gives you more information on how you can actually streamline that. customer relationships. This gives like different tiers of AI support. One of the things I would recommend there is like if you do have a call center and you want to implement an AI, you could give your like press one for an AI agent, press two to wait for a human. You know what I'm saying? That sort of a thing gives people the option so that they're not forced to talk to an AI if they don't want to. But I know myself, I don't mind pulling up to Taco Bell and placing my order with an AI agent because I know it's not that complicated. You know what I'm saying? I don't say, hold this, don't put this on, let me get one of these items, but make sure you add this type of whatever. I don't have, if I'm calling into a call center, if I don't have in-depth needs, I don't mind working with an AI bot, stuff like that. And then we have our operations here. This is kind of like just like more of an overview of um, best principles and best practices for adopting AI into your business. So I can give that as well as a bonus asset at the end. Okay, so how are we doing on time? So it is 11 o'clock. I'm moving at a good clip here. So we created this thing called an AI roadmap, and yes, we used AI to develop this, but it's also something that we use and something that is kind of help driving us. So there's 5 different stages of AI adoption. You have your dreamer, which is I don't know if anybody on this call is a dreamer, basically somebody who hasn't even really yet begun to use AI. Then you have their dabbler, which is the people, which are most people. If you say, have you used AI? Yeah, I use ChatGPT. Great, you're a dabbler. That's okay. Builder, this is the phase that we are in. Well, we're kind of like halfway between builder and operator because builder is someone who's using tools, and I'll dive deeper into this, using tools to actually you're dependent on. The difference between builder and operator from a business standpoint is your entire team using the tools all, whereas if you took them away, would it actually hurt your business? And then architect, that's where you're basically using AI so much where it's like electricity, where if you cut AI, your whole business basically shuts down. Um, I know that might sound like, why would you ever want to be that dependent on AI? Well, why are you that dependent on electricity? Why are you that dependent on computers? It's going to be something that's that taken for granted that I would encourage people to adopt to that level of proficiency. Um, if AI ever gets cut, like electricity ever gets cut, then we have bigger problems, right? So that's kind of where to the doomsdayers and to the people who think that they're gonna somehow protect themselves, I would caution you against being so AI resistant that you miss out on potential business growth opportunities. So let's dive deeper into this. This is a PDF that I have. I've printed it out too, so it's formatted for 8.5 by 11. But this dives deeper into this. I want to spend some time kind of going into this. Feel free to ask questions. But the way how we have this broken down is here's the phases. And then you can think of this if you're if you're a professional, let's say you don't have any say in the overarching brand of the business that you work within. Um, then adopt this as a personal goal, right? So, like I mentioned, you have your dreamers. So you have your key actions. These, oops, apologize there. Key actions, basically, this is um, what you're doing in each phase. So if you're in the dreamer phase, you might be watching some videos or reading some things, some articles about, businesses using AI, and you're becoming more and more aware of its needs. Expectations, this next category here. This I added this category because when I was using AI starting off, I uh I was like, all right, how hard is it to build this sort of a workflow? And I think it was Gemini I was using, I can't remember. And it's like, yeah, let's do it. It's totally possible. I'm like, great, you told me it's possible, so let's do it. So we're getting into it, and I'm like an hour in, and I'm having all kinds of issues. And I was like, first of all, how much is this going to cost me? Well, once you have it set up, it's probably going to cost with these tools and plus those subscriptions, it's probably going to cost you around $200 a month. I'm like, whoa, I didn't know it was going to cost that much. And then I said, how much time is this going to take to set it up, to build it? And it was like, it's probably going to take another, 20 hours. And I was like, man, I really wish I would have known that before I started working on this. I said, so it's not some quick thing that we can just set up. It's like, no, okay. Really wish I would have asked that question first before I just wasted an hour, you know? Um, so this chart kind of gives you an expectations of how much how much time and how much money would be involved, and also gives you an idea of um, what tools are going to be needed. The next category there, DIY versus help. This is also very helpful because we there's a lot that we can do ourselves, but it's good to know when to bring in help because even we at Identity Creative, I don't have the capabilities of getting us to step 5 by myself. Um, so um, so then and key checkpoints. This is a question that you ask yourself that lets you know if you're ready to move to the next category. So, do I understand how AI can specifically solve a problem in my business? If the answer is yes, then great. You have officially moved to the next tier of this AI roadmap. And it's very easy to move from the exploration phase to the activation phase. It's harder to move from activation to enablement. It's even harder to move from the next to the next. The innovation, the final category, the architect, is by far the hardest to get to. But this is what I encourage. This is what I encourage businesses to strive for. Um, so, all right. So I will give this as well as we'll put this out there. I'll put a post out on LinkedIn with the recording to this meeting as well as these assets to download. So, any questions on this chart here? I know it looks really in depth and it's kind of a lot to take in right now. It might be a good idea to print this off and really kind of like look it over. Um, one of the tools I feel like is left out of this in the middle category and under expectations. There is a tool called Lindy. Um, which I think is a very powerful tool. I've been finding because I use a lot of different tools, but Lindy is $60 a month. This is not scripted. So it's $60 a month, and I can put something out there about it. But it's marketed as your personal assistant. And I think that if people can kind of think of AI going forward as your personal assistant, it's really going to enable you to be more successful. And this tool has a chat feature where you can just build custom agents. And I am blown away by what it's capable of doing. So, just as a quick example, I said, "Hey, I spent a lot of time prospecting. Can you build me an agent where I that has a chatbot feature where I can go into the chatbot and say, find me 5 companies within my ideal customer profile, and then research them, find their email addresses or the leadership position email addresses." And then draft an email to that person. And then I give it my knowledge base. And my first test, I was blown away. It pulled up an ICP, somebody who would be perfect for us, drafted an email, and I read it over. I'm like, this is incredible. Now, the challenge there is going back to those pitfalls to just run with it. Um, I need to properly vet these tools, properly vet the results to make sure that it's not doing anything that's harmful and not doing anything that falls outside of our sales process. So, but that's another tool. So that's Lindy, Lindy, for anyone looking to dabble with something like that. Very powerful tool. It's $60 a month. I cannot recommend it enough. Anyways, okay, if there's no more questions on here, one thing I will say is at the bottom, the innovation, the architect. Um, this is so for all the businesses out there, and for anyone who's going to be watching this recording, your pathway to success, to full on AI adoption innovation, is not going to happen without an AI architect. And we'll talk about that in a second. But that's why I'm glad Tony and Piyush are on the call. They're going to talk about that afterwards. So what do we do moving forward now? One, we're going to get clear on our core identity. We talked about that. Who are you as a brand? This has nothing to do with AI. This has everything to do with you. Um, identify areas for enhancement. That was this discussion around, what are your options from marketing, sales, customer service, operations. So get clear on the areas of your business that are primed for enhancement. Experiment with brand first lens, going back to what we were talking about with those pitfalls and those brand opportunities, making sure that you fully understand what your brand is and how you can communicate that. That's what we do here at Identity Creative. We approach everything with a brand first lens. In other words, what brand first lens basically means is before you do anything, you say, okay, how is this going to affect the brand? How is this going to affect how we are perceived? How is this going to affect how we even perceive ourselves? Um, Scale with strategy. So that roadmap, super critical. Have a plan. You don't have to use this roadmap. We created this for ourselves. Um, but feel free to create your own roadmap. But just have something, have a plan. And then finally, bring in experts to get it done. So Tony and Piyush, they are with an AI architect company called is it Ignitia AI? Is that right? Okay. And they're going to talk about what they do and who they are. But before they do, one of the things I'm really thankful for them because we get asked a lot of questions. Hey, do you do AI implementation? And I tell people, no, we don't do AI implementation, and you should be very careful who you run into who says that they do. If they are not an AI architect company who specializes in bringing on these tools, bringing on and adapting to these new tools, then you should be very cautious. But Tony, I know from years back, I've been seeing a lot of stuff he's been doing on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, we should get together. I told him, hey, I need an AI architect that I can refer to. Is this something that you guys do? Sure enough, they do. So, Tony and Piyush, I'm going to hand it over to you guys. Feel free. You got, I would say probably like 8 to 10 minutes ish to give your spiel, kind of talk about what you guys do. And for the rest of you guys on the call, feel free to ask them questions. Their company, I'm like, you guys are, are you guys ready to scale fast? Because the more and more people find out about these tools and find out that they need healthy adoption, they're going to be calling you guys. So, Tony, Piyush, take it away.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. This is actually a really impressive presentation so far. I enjoyed it. Yeah, so Piyush and he has to run here in a moment, so I will be running this. We have a company called Initia AI. We work with businesses in integrating AI, but more importantly, planning and road mapping, as well as actually doing training. Let's see if I can grab the screen here. So, I think Matthew brought up a lot of great points, and that's that, AI is the future. We all, I think, realize this. However, that doesn't mean your entire life needs to transform and become an AI focus, right? The important thing for you is, and your brand is, how do we actually get, Matthew, can I grab the screen?
Yeah.
How do we actually start, right? And so one of the first things that we like to do is actually understand, first of all, this is a platform that we're building for some of our enterprise uh, things, which is starting by understanding a company org chart. And then once we have that, we can then understand what each role does and how they relate to each other, things like that, right? But see, that's kind of the point of this, is that you want to understand interconnections, right? So think about your customers. How do your customers relate to each other? How do they relate to you? What kind of tools can you use to actually connect with them, right? What are the customer, like, who are your customer personas? That's something that is really some valuable tools that you can get through using Claude or ChatGPT, is actually getting like, tell me more about the use persona of this type of customer, etc. Right? And so helping to understand your market, understand your users, is really a great way to creating a roadmap. And then having a roadmap is something really important. So what we do is we have AI training for small business. We also can build and develop applications. So when we sit down with clients, for sometimes they have ideas like, hey, we want to do this, and sometimes we can go ahead and get started. But sometimes the trick to getting started with AI is to identify low-hanging fruit. So what can we actually start with, right? Like, let's not try and boil the ocean. Let's come up with like one or two small use cases that we can show some wins on, something that we can get some ROI on, something that we can actually get new customers. And the first thing about, is identifying within your company what are some of your biggest needs. Piyush and I are not looking to replace people or cut labor. What we're looking to do is to empower people. And right now, Matthew mentioned LinkedIn. I did actually post about this. I'd love to connect with anyone. I'm hoping we can find a way to send the link to everyone's LinkedIn. But right now is a time where people should be empowering their team and giving them, like he said, the star in Super Mario Brothers. Like, how can we supercharge our team? Because you can now do things that were never before possible. And the first thing about it is doing what we're doing right now, which is educating ourselves a little bit, understanding what tools are available, using our ability to brainstorm and identify what will help us as a company or a brand grow. Okay, what markets do we want to get into that haven't been successful? And once you have a plan and a roadmap, then the AI sort of takes care of itself. Piyush and I, this is what we do. I actually teach a course on AI solutions architecture. So, we understand the technicals and some of the implementation, things like that. But the first thing is really to understand really what are your objectives, to have clear objectives. We can't, like, your business, what you do, right? We can help you do things to build that, but ultimately you understand that, and that's for you and your team to really work together and develop. So some of the things we do for training are, let's just say we want to go through some sort of AI training, like how do you streamline sales processes, improve customers or prospect engagement, target precision, sales KPIs, but also strategic impact. How can we reduce time? Like, no one on this call wants to work more. No one wants to be like this hero who's working 60, 70 hours a week building their own brand like that. Those days are like, first of all, that was a false god to worship anyway. Like, life is, no one wants to work that much, right? So how can we reduce time on some of the busy work that we had to do? How can we improve quality of communications, right? Understanding our pipeline, and then direct instructions hands-on. So a couple quick things. These are some things that we actually work with small businesses. But really the first goal is to actually sit down and understand with your team where you guys are going. What is your direction? And then identifying ways that you can actually get there. I do a lot of work in manufacturing production, but these are kind of our strategy is, we can work in 1 hour sessions with groups. We can do hands-on, we can do things with training. There's really kind of a lot of stuff going on. Our one pager, again, core services, consulting roadmaps. Again, like, I can't stress enough like how important actually having a roadmap is for AI. The application development, like what is realistic, what maybe is not something that you should start with, let's put it that way. We've seen a lot of news lately about AI applications failing, and a lot of times it's because they don't really have a good scope and they don't really have a good idea what success is. But ultimately, the value is in understanding and training, and how can you upskill your employees or yourself to actually be able to identify new possibilities. Okay. And, just to give one example, Matthew mentioned this, one of the tools that I like to use is I use it's his tool. What he mentioned with Lindy is definitely great. I use another one called Fathom, where I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the note takers, and people have probably seen summaries of calls that people usually send out call notes. I like that. But, one of the things that I also like to do is actually use this to give myself feedback. So for instance, let's say I'll take this call I had I'm actually out in the Bay Area a lot. And this gentleman is a VC who funds in manufacturing. So I can actually take this entire transcript and then do things like, please review this call with Simon and help me identify a roadmap for us to collaborate, right? So I'm actually taking the entire, whoops, wrong, sorry about that. Wrong, that's take two, copy transcript. So now I'm taking the entire call, and what this, normally if I look at this, like here's the summary, the key takeaways, here's the main topics we discussed, meeting expectations, and the next steps. And I like this too because when I said he's gonna um, target background, I can click on this and it goes right to that point in the call. So I can actually go back and review the calls himself, right? So imagine you're pitching to a client. Okay. I've used this for my boss. One time he and I did a sales pitch for a client, and frankly, it didn't really go well. And so I put the entire transcript in here and said, imagine you're a business coach, give us some feedback on this presentation and how we can improve for future actual targets. And let's see how we're doing here. Well, Matthew, as you know, we're having a fun demo. Let's try this again.
I mean, it looked like it was going.
Yeah, I'll reopen it. Okay, here we go. Based on my research into this person, so it actually looked up who he is and what he does. This looks like an exceptionally promising. Let me break down what I found. So here's what he does. This aligns with your background, collaboration roadmap. I like this too. Phase 1, immediate action next 30 days. Phase 2, partnership development, etc. So I really like this, how it's now giving me, here's what you should do right now. Here's some things you should work on next. And then in your long-term plans, here's some big, key items that you can do, etc., etc. I can now take this, copy this, share this with my team. And now we have, again, roadmaps. That's something that we really like to focus on. So little tools, but if you are interested in uh, developing AI, developing ways to build your brand, or if you have application ideas that you want to develop, we'd be more than happy to, help you talk about that
Yeah.
and see what we can do.
And one of the cool things about the team over there at Ignitia is the three leaders there are Tony, Piyush, and is it Bruce?
Bruce.
So they all had different backgrounds that make it such an important collaborative executive team. And then from there they have developers and anyone that they need to bring in to build these workflows. But Tony brings a technical expertise as like project lead. Bruce is a lawyer who has understands all the legal implications. And this is something that I get asked a lot because that's super critical, especially in these high risk industries. And then Piyush brings with him years and years of implementation of tools and software from like IBM, right? So they have together they create this like awesome business that's just ready to build AI solutions for businesses. They're who I would recommend. And especially moving forward, if you're looking to implement tools, workflows, systems that are high level and can't necessarily be done just with a simple subscription, and or you fall into one of the higher risk industries, um, definitely give these guys a call. Tony, what's the best way for people to contact you?
You can go right to our site, ignitia-ai.com. I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. I think you have the chat disabled.
Is the chat disabled?
I could post.
Oops. Abby, is there any way that we could get that chat up? working?
Yeah, let me see if I can troubleshoot for some. It looks like it's available, but let me.
It's yeah, it's showing disabled on my end too. Otherwise, we can also send it out. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, okay. There we go. So this was actually first, if I might share this. This is the post that we talked about earlier about AI being kind of like a star in Super
Yes.
Mario Brothers. And through that, you can actually grab. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. We can certainly chat there, or I'll put my website here in the chat if you want to get a little bit better idea what we want to do. Or, of course, if you want to email me directly.
Okay.
I'm always interested in talking to new people and hearing where they're at and what kind of things they're interested in.
Yeah. So for a lot of the people who might be watching this recording, I know we had several people who wanted to attend, but they weren't able to make it. For those of you who are watching the recording, who can't necessarily get on the chat, we'll put all this in the link afterwards. So you should find it all there. But so we're coming up here on 11:30. Are there any questions, thoughts, anything you guys want to discuss or get clarity around? I know normally we go to 12, but I wanted to cut it at 11:30 just to give you guys time to get on with your day or to give us time to have more in-depth discussion if it's worth your time.
I think it's really important, Matthew, to, for people who are interested in this, to find a friend or, a colleague or something that you can actually like have conversations and discussions with. Because
Hmm.
one of the things about, getting into AI is it could be, like you mentioned earlier, where you're hoping it actually slows down. Like it can be totally overwhelming. And what I would recommend to people is don't try and learn everything. It's nice to understand big picture concepts, but realistically, focus on your specific vertical. Like like if you're creatives, there's a number of good YouTube channels that just talk about creative tools. Like just worry about, learn about that. Like
Hmm.
you don't need to learn the latest of, the architecture of GPT-5 and how the processing is done like that's not really going to help you, right? So what I found is find something that you are interested in, and then there's a number of good actual sources. Like I'll put one more in the chat too. Futuretools.io is a great source that has like different applications and things that you might be able to find that could help you. There's a lot of no code tools that you can use. So the barrier to entry of using new software or new applications is actually really low, but it's really up to you to go out and find it.
Awesome. Yeah, there's I mean, one of the things I tell people is don't look at this like, oh, I have to. It's like, no, I get to. It's exciting. There's a bunch of new tools that have been released. So start with ChatGPT or whatever and say, you know, this is my industry. What are some tools out there that can help me? And what's the cost of adoption and how much, is it pretty difficult or is it pretty easy to get started with? And then yeah, take your time. And going back to the crux of this conversation is expect to have to change a few of your preconceived notions and mindsets are going to have to shift a little bit. People are going to have to understand that AI is going to become part of your business that's as redundant as the electricity or the computer, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, um, don't think of it as just this flash in the pan phase that's just going to be here 1 second, gone the next. We've seen all the practical uses of it, and there's no way that this sort of stuff is just going to fall out of phase or fall out of a fad. It's not. I guarantee it won't. So, yeah. Well, I mean, Tony, any other last words or anyone else?
I guess I'll just say this, again, we don't want to get people afraid, worry or afraid, but the advantages to people who are first movers in using AI tools for whatever business they are significant. And frankly, might or might not make or break your company. I mean, no pressure, but there will be an expectation of having incredibly increased productivity within the next 2 years. And so you
Yeah.
have to ask yourself, how are you going to upskill to meet new customer expectations? Because if you don't do it, somebody else will. And I mean, that's not a threat. Like that's just a fact. And so the time is really now to start. Again, you don't have to dedicate your lives to learning all these stuff, but at least start to understand, familiarize yourself so that you can grow with this new technology and use it to your advantage.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, connect with Tony on LinkedIn. Follow him. He's got a lot of good stuff. Um, our next webinar is actually not going to be a webinar, but it's going to be an in-person. Woohoo! So it's going to be a seminar in Rochester Hills. And we are going to be tag teaming with another team that's going to help us pull that off. So the tentative date for that is September 25th. And the time is going to be in the morning. We're still kind of working out all of the absolute details, but if you want to be informed on that, please send us your email. You can put it in the chat here, or just email me at matthew@identitycreative.com, and we will make sure that you're notified when this comes. So more to come on that a little bit, and then we'll continue our regular webinar cadence. But until then, everybody else have a great day and keep learning. It's exciting times. And thanks, Tony.